Hi there, I'm Jamie from AnOregonCottage.com, and today I want to share with you how I dry and store tomatoes. Once they're dried, then I go ahead and with a vinegar rinse, I store them in olive oil, and I just store them like this on our shelf, and they last the entire year. I first started doing this back in the 90s when I read about it in the Oregonian, by a woman named Jan Roberts Dominicus, and she was the preservation writer, and I learned a lot of things from her. It is completely safe, although I would say that in the last year I did read on one blog somewhere where someone said it wasn't safe, and when I did research trying to find out where that had come from, there wasn't any definitive research about it. And I just feel like it's something that is tradition, and it's time-honored, and it's a really good way to preserve your food. But I do want to make that caveat that it's up to you how much you want to do. I've written all about my research and what I found on my blog, and I'd like to refer you to that if you have any questions about the safety of it. So here we are in our laundry room. That's where I put the dryer, and I use an Excalibur food dryer. So I prepare all of the tomatoes. I only used paste tomatoes. I want real nice, firm tomatoes. I cut them in half, and I get most of the seeds out. I don't really care so much. I get some of the core out. If some is left in there, it's not that big of a deal. And I start them on the backs so they dry, except for this very top one. I can only fit 3 trays. This originally holds 5 trays, but they're so thick when you first start out that I can only fit 3. And on this top one, I really squish it in there, so these I can start. You can start, you'll see what happens later. They just stick more if you start on the bottom. Excalibur goes to about 145 degrees. I'll start it on that now. It's going to take a long time for them to start going. Okay, it's been 6 hours, and so I'm going to check it because with tomatoes, they're all different sizes, and they also don't dry evenly, at least in this dryer. So you can see that the tomatoes at the back are more dry than these tomatoes at the front. Anyway, I'm going to go ahead and turn these all around and turn them all over and put them in again at between 135 to 145, and I'll check again probably in 2 to 3 hours this time. One of the reasons I wanted to do this video is so you can see that they're just really dry at different rates. Some tomatoes are smaller, some are thicker, some are meatier. There's just no way you're just going to have to check them now at this point about every hour to 2 hours. I want to feel it, and if there's any kind of moisture that's on my hands at all or gets on my hands, this is super dry here, not quite as dry here. But when I go like that, there's no moisture at all. So that's the leather, that's the kind of leather like that we want. So I'm going to put that out. Okay, here's one, and this is pretty dry on the side, but this is really very moist. You can see the moisture on it, and you can feel it, and you can see it on my finger. So that one is not ready, so that's going to go back in there. So far we have this much that is all dried and ready to go, but there's still some actually drying that are finishing up. Sometimes I just turn the dryer off and let the tomatoes sit in it overnight, and that's fine. Nothing happens to them. And then in the morning I check and get out any that need to be, and then run it again for the rest of them. So once you get your first batch ready to go, you want to take some, I like to use red wine vinegar or white wine vinegar. You can actually use cider vinegar. We're going to give the dried tomatoes, a little vinegar bath before we put them in the jar. This is a great time to use an old jar that has one of these bale lids that you can't use for canning or anything anymore. So you just want to give the tomatoes a nice bath. And now some of my tomatoes did get a little too crispy, but unless they're super crispy, which then you can powder them and use them for powder, I just go ahead and still do this. They don't soften that much more, but it's enough to where you can use it. So you want to drip them. I always use tongs or something so that you can kind of get the excess drip in there. And then once you get a nice good layer of tomatoes in the bottom, you're going to completely cover the tomatoes with olive oil. And that's key. If you can look inside there, you can see that you want them to be completely covered. No tomatoes left on top. It really makes a nice product. So that's how you dry tomatoes and store them in olive oil.